Chief, welcome to the program.
It's a pleasure, Scott. Thank you.
This has been quite a week for our country and for the Bay Area. We've had a shutdown, week 2 of the shutdown in Washington. What do you make of the seeming intractability of the partisan divide and the inability to come together for what seems to be the best of the country?
I think it's the best and worst of a civics lesson. This is your check and balance in action. However, there needs to be action, not just check and balance. And I think that's when the parties have to start discussing to coming together and thinking about this as a long-term solution.
Here in California, of course, the courts have seen about a 65% loss of their state funding. I think you got a little bit of that money back in this current year. What impact has that had on justice in California?
It's undermined justice. It's also contributed to a two-tier system of justice. What it has done is made your day in court unattainable. When closing courts and reducing hours, we're basically denying justice across the state.
And who suffers most?
I would say primarily low-income, middle-income businesses trying to resolve their disputes in an orderly way. Those who can will use other private alternatives to resolve their disputes. But those of us who need to go to the court, who don't have those kinds of resources, find ourselves getting, I think, frankly, a second system of justice.
This week, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected the governor's appeal of caps that have been put on prison population in California. The governor saying if we release any more inmates, it's going to threaten public safety potentially. Were you surprised at all that the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, wasn't more sympathetic to those arguments?
No, I'm not surprised. California is under incredible change with more resentencing, a different kind of resentencing, with more parolees in county jail and on the streets than in the prisons, with courts having to deal with a split sentence, with Prop 36 passed by the voters, where a certain type of three-strike offenders are entitled to be resentenced. So we're looking at a sea change in criminal justice in California, and the cap is part of that. But we've known about this cap for some time now.
I know that one issue you've been very involved and concerned about is juvenile justice in California. Tell us a little bit about why you feel that should be such a high priority.
A child who is suspended in school has 3 times a chance to have contact with the juvenile justice system. And once in the juvenile justice system, they're out of school, they're disconnected, and they have an even greater chance of going into the adult criminal justice system. And so I have instituted convened groups that we can address the issue.
When you were first named to the state Supreme Court by Governor Schwarzenegger, a lot was made of the fact that you were a Filipina American and the first Filipina American Chief Justice in the U.S. What did you make of all that? What do you make of it when you hear yourself described that way?
Well, I'll say in the beginning, it sort of startled me because I've been on the bench 20 years before I went to the Supreme Court. And I've always been Filipino-Portuguese American, and I've always been female. And so you get sort of used to that over the years. And so when I walk into a room or I'm interacting with a group of new people, it's not necessarily what's on my mind as to how they perceive me. But so when there was that statewide recognition, it reawakened old memories of starting out being the diverse person in the group. And it awakened memories of experiences of my parents and parallel experiences of different immigrant communities in California.
How do you think that influences the way you view the issues and the people that come before you?
I think most definitely being of a minority party, being female in an otherwise previously male-dominated profession, it certainly opens my eyes to the bigger picture of what's going out there. I think my lenses take in a little bit more having been part of those communities. And
the court also is very diverse, the Supreme Court, but the court system in California is still about 68% male. It's becoming more diverse, but not nearly as much so as the state Supreme Court is. What difference does it make?
Well, I think it makes a big difference. First of all, I think for the public to have confidence and trust in our public institutions, that they need to know that they have access to those, not only to appear, for example, in court, but also to be a part of the court if they choose to be part of the decision makers. And it's true, the population of judges doesn't reflect the ethnic population of California, nowhere near. And so you're right, we have a long way to go to reflect California's diversity.
Quick question about the initiative system in California, because the same-sex marriage, Proposition 8, was before your court, before you got there, and since you've been there. And one of the things that happened during that period period of time is that you wrote an opinion that was unanimous, saying that if you're a proponent of a ballot measure and the governor and the attorney general don't want to defend it, that you have standing to defend it in court. And yet the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court said no, they didn't have standing. Where do you think that leaves the initiative system in California?
I think that it leaves the initiative system in California still intact, because our decision still is controlling for the state of California in terms of standing in that unusual circumstance. Of course, I have to say I read the dissent as authored by Justice Anthony Kennedy very closely and with many cheers, understanding our initiative process in California that you alluded to is so different from initiative processes across the country. We're unique in California, and in California, the Supreme Court is the final and the only review of an initiative measure.
Which some would argue should change.
That's right. Many would argue should change.
Yeah. Before I let you go, I know that when you were a young woman, you were a waitress at one point, and you were also a card dealer.
That's right.
And I brought with me today a deck of cards. And I'm going to see, you dealt blackjack, I think.
I did, but not for 30 years.
Not for 30 years.
Let's see.
I remember you told me you could hit me with a card from across the room when I taught you. Let's see your chops here.
Let's see. Okay. Well, you know, it's been a while, and I'm usually on a felt table. So let's just say I'm making my excuses now. So, you know, you sort of angle the deck down, and you flick it. You flick it. So you hit it. It's been a while, but give me a couple hours and I can aim it.
Stick to the briefs.
Sorry, it's been a while.
Okay.
But there you go.
Good, lucky number. Chief Justice, thank you so much for coming in. Really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Scott, as usual.